Rebecca's right down the hall, but this is the owl right here. It's got a 360 camera.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So everyone in Zoom will see our room like, like a war room.
Yeah.
I can start the video if you want,
All right, we should be streaming now.
although.
We gotta say something so that it'll. Can you see us, Rebecca?
I can see you in the Zoom, not on the YouTube yet. Oh, maybe there's just a bit of a lag.
So that's us.
Oh, neat. And it just picks up over here.
Yep. Usually, sometimes someone will cough and it'll zoom in on their face. It's a little awkward, but
That is weird.
usually it's pretty smart.
Slowly.
Okay. Okay. We can hear you breathe, Rebecca.
Oh.
Probably most people are calling on Zoom, but you never know who shows up. Basically, it used to be in person, and then COVID happened, so we went to online. Now everyone just says, "Oh, it's very convenient, just call in." So we haven't had any in-person attendance since.
Hey, Alex, are you gonna be the one who needs to share your screen? One doesn't have it.
I didn't want to do the roll call. Are you just gonna go down and do this? Hello, everyone that's joining. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes for more folks to join.
Now, often do you have these meetings with this quarterly?
Quarterly.
Yeah.
So on the agenda, we haven't set the remaining 3 days yet. We just wanted to run 3 days past every month, but probably May, August, November. And we'll talk about that in meetings. Rebecca might need to.
Hey, Rebecca, can you make Alex co-host?
Yep.
Hey, Robbie.
Yes, Sandy.
Hi,
Good to meet you finally in person.
likewise. Congratulations on your grant award.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's
we're
great.
excited.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's perfect timing because I think the opportunity to coordinate these a little bit and you're probably doing some of the data collection, at least to some degree, that might help you and vice versa. So this will be great.
Perfect.
Yes, it's on the desktop.
Do you want us to over it?
You see at the top, yeah. I just curious, there's only like 4 or 5 slides.
Alex, can you stop sharing?
Sure.
Sandy's gonna do her quick presentation first.
Nope, just glad we got the screen sharing worked out.
Yeah. To help us with introductions and also the meeting notes, if you're joining online, could you make sure your name is shown there and your organization or some kind of abbreviation for your organization? All right, well, it's 1:01. I think we can go ahead and get started. So thank you for attending the Regional Operations and Safety Advisory Committee of the Capital Region Transportation Council. In the interest of time for introductions, I'm gonna read through the online ones and then we'll just do quick intros for the four of us who are in the room. So we have Rebecca Odell, Transportation Council, Alex Cohn with Cambridge Systematics, Al Carolis and Clifton Park, Audrey Burness and NISDOT, Ben Wolf, AECom, Chris Bauer at the Transportation Council, Corey Hopwood also with Cambridge Systematics, Ethan Warren with CDTA, Howard Goebel with City of Albany Engineering, Ginny Brown with Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, Laura Byer at Byer Planning, Liz Podolsky King with Highland Planning, Mark Castiglione with CDRPC, Robert Zatowski with NISDOT Safety Office, Teresa LaSalle, Capital Region Transportation Council, Brian DePalma at Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, and a phone number that ends in 4263. Could you, for the person who's the phone number, could you let us know who you are? Okay,
It's not easy to unmute on phone when you've called in.
and then in the room, I'm Carrie Ward with the Transportation Council.
Good afternoon, Andrew Tracy, also with the Transportation Council.
Sandy Miswitz, Executive Director of the Transportation Council.
And I'm Robbie McHugh with the Colony MS Department.
Super. So we do have a little bit of an updated agenda. We have a presentation from Sandy on advisory committee procedures. Alex, just because I can see your face, can you tell me what you guys are seeing?
We see your presentation, the edit view,
Now what do you see?
presenter view.
Yeah, just
Share that screen up there.
So then he's gonna be sure.
Well, go back and then launch the slideshow and then in Zoom. Yeah. Oh, bring that back down to the laptop. Okay, now share that screen. That, or either one, yeah, either way. Okay. Can you see our cover slide now, Alex?
Was great.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I wanted to review with the group some proposed changes to how these advisory committees function. This is particularly timely for this group because of the safety project that we'll be talking about for the bulk of the agenda today. So next slide, Carrie.
You just go back to click any of the PowerPoints that you.
Perfect. So we currently have 4 active advisory committees here at the Transportation Council, ROSAC being one of them. We wanted to clarify the roles and responsibilities of all the participants in the groups, so that there's consistency across all of our advisory committees here, and that you folks have an understanding of how the public interacts with this group and the content we'll be talking about over the coming months and years. So in terms of the role, the members here, or participants, I should say, you know, are going to have the opportunity to comment on the MPO or the Transportation Council's planning products, ranging from our long-range regional transportation plan, which we're developing, our capital program, which is referred to as the Transportation Improvement Program, and a number of other initiatives. So this group has this opportunity to provide feedback and input into those planning products and the process we use to develop them. We also will be sharing, and obviously the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan is a key one, information about regional and community level planning studies. So we've got 2 regional planning studies through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. Robbie at the Town of Colony is one of the other award recipients, so we'll be collaborating and talking about both of these projects throughout. And we also have community planning studies that we work with, and if there are safety elements, which almost all of them do, on occasion, we'll be bringing those projects to this group for, again, feedback and input into the planning process. Next slide. Couple other roles, when we do the capital program update, we'll be asking for your input into how proposed transportation improvement program projects or the capital projects are consistent with some of our safety plans that we've developed here in the region, and our federally required products. You know, what are some of those treatments and proposals that relate to safety and operations? On occasion, we'll also have member agencies, so members being those folks that are official voting members of the MPO or the Transportation Council. We'll report back on other larger regional planning studies like the 787 Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, or the State Strategic Highway Safety Plan, or even municipal comprehensive plans or plans at CDTA. So all of those things would be brought here at various times for your input. And then we always have the other. There's lots of things that, you know, we become agenda items that others are seeking input on from this group. This group really represents sort of the regional experts in both what we hope, both representing the topics of safety and operations. So, you know, there'll be a lot of things that we'll bring forward over the coming years related to all of these topics. So next slide. And this is just to clarify, you know, what participants are not encouraged to do. Because we've had some problems in other groups, not this group, in the past. This group doesn't make decisions on behalf of the Transportation Council. This group is really advising. It's really providing that input and feedback. Our policy board and planning committee members are the decision makers for our organization. You don't get to speak to the media representing yourself as a member of an advisory committee. These are not appointed positions. This is not that kind of environment. You're participating as a member of a community organization, a member of a local government, but you're not appointed. So you don't get to represent yourself as a member of the advisory committee. We also have some rules regarding the use of our logos, letterhead, and other media without our consent. The only time you're allowed to do that is our publicly available information or things that we specifically ask, you know, folks to share. But, you know, we've had situations where folks have created their own content using our logo, and that's what we're trying to avoid. When it comes to commenting on design details of capital projects, and this really comes up a lot in the safety conversation, the place to do that is through the local government's public participation process for that project. So for example, if there's a capital project going on Wolf Road and they're talking about some design treatments on Wolf Road, the place to comment on those design treatments is in the public process managed by the sponsor of the Wolf Road project not here at the table. It doesn't mean you can't have conversations about that, but this is not the place to really dive into the design details of the capital projects. And then just in terms of how our participant contact information is used, we are not allowed to lobby. So we, the contact lists are sort of proprietary and shall not be used to solicit for purposes of lobbying or sharing petitions and these sorts of activities. Next slide. So I think the most substantive change for this group is going to be how meetings are managed. They're open to everyone. Again, there's no appointment process. We have planning committee members participating in these groups, but these are open to the public. So as we're walking through, particularly with the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, we'll talk later in the meeting about the role of this group in that process. All of these conversations are going to be open to the public. Our staff, largely Perry and Andrew, will be setting the meeting agendas and managing the meetings. We're gonna have a public comment agenda item on each agenda moving forward, which will allow a member of the public to register to speak on a topic, up to 5 minutes per speaker. They can also submit written comments for anything that's not on the written agenda, but the idea here is to help manage the meetings. We wanna maintain the conversations to what's on the written agenda as much as possible, because it's very easy to get sidetracked by a hot button issue that someone has, that may generate a lot of conversation. 1 week prior to these meetings, we'll be submitting the agendas and materials, we'll be posting them, I should say, on the website and email to the participant list for the group, and all the meeting dates will be made available again on our website, in our newsletter, on social media, etc. So again, it's very open to the public. And again, I think the biggest change here is this last bullet, which is our meetings are all, advisory committees meetings are going to be broadcasted live, recorded, and made available on our YouTube channel. So there will be folks listening in at all times, and the idea here is to be as transparent as possible, and allow as many people to participate who can't attend these meetings during the time of day or for other reasons in person, but to have that opportunity to review what was discussed at a later date. Next slide. So, this is sort of the wrap up. I've discussed this approach with all of the advisory committees at this point. This is actually the last one today. If you have any questions or concerns about the advisory committee operations, now is the time to voice them. Our policy board is going to be acting on this policy March 7th. And at which point by April 1st, we'll be implementing the new procedures. Which again includes the live streaming and recording the meetings and having the public comment periods on the agenda. So if you have any questions or comments, I'll take them now, and that's all I have to share today. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Sandy?
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Alex, just hold on 1 minute, because I thought it might be helpful for Robbie to give a quick summary of what the grant, the SS4A grant that they got before you, just for context, together with our project. So.
All right, well, thank you again for the invitation and for your support of our grant. You did a very quick turnaround when we asked for a letter of support last year. And the grant would have been up to $1 million for action plan and demonstration projects. We did collaborate with 2 surrounding municipalities, the town of Clifton Park, Half Moon, and town of Guilderland EMS departments, as well as looped in our traffic safety department in the town of Colony. And to apply for this grant on a regional approach, our goal in the safe plan overview that the SS4A outlines is improving post-crash care. So that includes a factor of emergency vehicles responding to crashes, and how do we make the roads safer? How do we stop any accidents that may be even caused by emergency vehicles responding to emergency calls? Our folks do operate on high-speed roadways So it can be a very dangerous environment, and the more notice we can give drivers on the road that there is an emergency ahead, the better, the safer we can make those environments. So we wrote the grant for a two-phased approach. One half is exploring different technologies, vehicle AVL technology, transponder technology that could alert more modern cars and give them up to 15 to 30 seconds notice if there's an emergency scene ahead. So we're looking at exploring those different technologies and how could they be implemented and tested in a pilot program across approximately 80 vehicles, emergency vehicles in those municipalities. The second half of that is exploring, of that first part actually, is also looking at other intelligent crosswalk technologies that could be demonstrated by our traffic safety division, working in conjunction with the state DOT, because many of the roads that we see as issues here in the town of Colony are also state roads. So how can we work in conjunction with other planning projects there to see if there's a way to redesign an intersection or have some funding available to explore technologies that could make crosswalks safer. The second half of the approach that we applied for and that was approved was a health information exchange, a pre-hospital health information exchange. And how do we explore all of the structured and unstructured data sets and databases that are out there and link them together in a secure manner that is both compliant with privacy regulations and also gives our providers at their fingertips at the point of care access to pertinent information. We don't want to see 1,000 pages of medical records. We would love to see the top 3 things that are pertinent to that person's care. And with technology of vehicles on the road, smartphone technology, that information is being stored in various places. And how can we ensure that the secure data moves through the 911 system to the providers that are responding, and potentially the providers could get an idea of who is in that likely to be in that car before they even get there. And maybe they have some type of medical conditions that they want us to know about. So in a nutshell, we're excited. It was approved for a $3 million collaborative grant, $2.4 million in federal funding, $600,000 in local match funding or in-kind donations. So we are excited to work together and through this process. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
How far have you gotten into your process? Have you gotten your grant agreement signed, just so we have?
Right. About a week ago, we received the grant agreement, so we still have to go through that contract and work back and forth to execute on the grant. Our plan is a action plan and the demonstration projects over the next 1 to 2 years.
Great.
Any other questions for Robbie?
I just wanted to give the Assistant Chief a heads up that the Regional Planning Commission is currently pursuing a feasibility study for an open access fiber network. And so open access networks are publicly owned infrastructure, which could provide public safety organizations a private access to sort of the internet. So typically more secure, and we'll be sure to reach out to partners in the public safety realm as we engage a contractor to do that work.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else?
I'm here just curious to learn, especially learning about the planning processes that are already in place and see how we can work together and not duplicate anyone's efforts, of course.
This is perfect timing because I think we're all more or less at the beginning stages, so we'll walk through the rest of the discussion on our Vision Zero City action plan.
Yeah, so we have Alex Cohn and Corey Hopwood here to talk about our upcoming, what we're gonna call Vision Zero Action Plan, although it is funded through the Safe Streets and Roads for All FHWA grant program. So take it away, Alex.
Well, thank you, Carrie, Sandy, and everyone. Just like to introduce our team here. We have Corey Hopwood, our project manager. We also have Liz Podwaski King with Highland Planning, who's leading our community engagement, and also Laura Beyer with Beyer Planning on the team as well. She's helping us a lot with our resource review and kind of building a whole geodatabase of some existing recommendations. So I just want to make sure they're online today for this conversation. Corey, you want to kind of give a little bit of an introduction of where we're?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so for the general agenda today, we're going to go over kind of our initial kickoff efforts of how this project will be laid out and how it'll be started. We'll start with Alex kind of already provided introductions of who's on our team. I'll get through kind of the purpose and the expected outcomes of the development of the plan and what the project will look like. Alex is going to walk us through a review of the tasks and scope, as well as the schedule for those, so you can get a general idea of where those timelines, deadlines will land, and hopefully that'll help with some of the ongoing efforts to start several other SS4A activities, which is really great and a good timing to have that discussion. As part of the discussion, we, looking for opportunities to overlap in a lot of the outreach and analysis pieces going forward. So if there's input there, any way in which we can work with you all to try and get some of that, some of those resources and some of that shared effort together. We're happy to facilitate that, and then we'll provide some next steps so you can see what to expect before the next time we meet. Next slide. Okay, so introductions. Alex kind of provided who was on the call already, but the idea behind how we structured this project team was one, to give that local presence, that understanding of the communities we're going to need to work with in terms of outreach and who we need to help address safety with at the highest risk levels and the most vulnerable users. But we also have a very strong team in terms of safety planning experience who have put together a ton of these local road safety plans, worked at the state level, worked at the federal level, and will hopefully in that way be able to bring in all the relative best practices across the country that are being done for these types of efforts. On the next slide, we have just our general layout of the team and the folks that are on the call today. Myself at the project manager position and Alex at DPM here. And then he mentioned Liz and Laura also joining us from their firms today. The next slide is just kind of showing the overall structure of the team across all the tasks. As Alex moves through the scope, just kind of wanted to note that you can see here every member of our team that's relevant to safety input and different tasks across this project development is going to be involved in each task. That way there is consistency, that way there is knowledge building, and we're not working backwards to let each other know what happened in task to task on a task to task basis. And that will help the plan develop and grow more naturally. As far as the key outcomes of this effort, we're really just looking to come up with a way to, one, put all of the ideas for what the shared vision, shared mission in terms of getting to zero and having a vision of roadway safety in the capital region will be. That's going to involve naturally the 4 E's that we know to be involved in the Vision Zero planning efforts: engineering, enforcement, education, emergency response. Glad to hear there's a post-crash care effort already underway. That's great, and also a unique thing I would say to a lot of the SS4A groups that we've been working with. That's one of the toughest ones to tackle is post-crash care as far as the 5 elements go. I'll give a little bit more detail on safe system approach here in a second to get into that, but that's very refreshing to hear. Part of the plan will also include a very structured and driven implementation program so that it's easy to follow up and make sure the strategies and actions developed as part of this project and as part of this plan don't just go flat after the plan's already been approved. One, it will lead to potential implementation grant funding, but there's also a lot of other resources and funding avenues that we want to make sure that the efforts and priorities of this plan are eligible for. So making sure that an implementation program is one set so that the roles are very clear, but then also that the resources and the opportunities for funding are very clear. And then also as part of that implementation program, putting up a strong reporting and tracking mechanism to really give it teeth and make sure the folks are really following the rules that they signed up for, hopefully with some very strong champions to drive that as well. As far as how this all fits together, we know at the state level, NISDOT just completed the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. There are a lot of great emphasis areas and statewide initiatives that are coming out of that will hopefully feed into this local planning effort. But as part of this Vision Zero action plan, we're going to get a little more focused. We're going to get a little more into priorities and specific locations on the roadway network via our network screening and via our analysis. And then also have a much more tailored and much more local engagement and outreach effort. So some of the things that don't necessarily happen at that state level planning effort also give us an opportunity to have more detailed emphasis areas. While the emphasis areas at the state level are very helpful, And we'll want to be consistent with them to stay eligible for different avenues of funding. Like I said before, there's an opportunity to get those a little more detailed, a little more tailored to the local concerns and issues we're seeing. And then at the last step there, that implementation projects, making sure we set up a good set of recommendations for our priority locations, as well as that very clear implementation program to make sure they have a path forward. And here's just the general kind of deadlines for each of those. We know that the NOFO was just released for implementation projects for this year for the SS4A grants. So we're just kind of getting, calibrating when we think those dates will be in the future years. Hard to predict, but in our discussions with FHWA, we'll try and share as much back with you as we can about when we think those general timelines will fall in the coming years. All right, so first off, just to give a general idea, we pulled together some performance measure data. These are just the traditional, HSIP performance measures that the state looks at, and that we'll start off looking at and trying to really break down, why certain things are trending in a certain fashion. The first one here will be fatalities, and you can just see from the MPO planning region looking at fatalities, we see a relative dip and then an increase coming through the COVID period and then out of it. If we look at the 5-year average across that time period, it's relatively flat, which is good news considering what we've seen across the country in terms of increases, but also obviously something we want to take from that kind of like plateau effect we're seeing and figure out how we're going to get reductions here in the immediate future. Same thing with serious injuries. We have a relatively flat trend line for the 5-year average from 2017, 2018 on. Again, we see the dip in 2023, but we could also see that things were starting to increase again as far as serious injuries, as COVID started and kind of ran its course, as behavior started to change, driving patterns started to change, and then traffic volumes went back to normal and increased again. But speaking of traffic volumes, we also wanted to look at rates relative to these metrics. We can see here that also for the 5-year average over the last couple of years, there is still an increase. And while the state overall has seen a dip annually in their fatality rate, the fatalities per the vehicle miles traveled in the region, the capital region, are on a slight increase. So something to keep in mind that, while fatalities and serious injuries are obviously a factor or a product of vehicle miles traveled and traffic volumes on our roadways, we can see that we're actually seeing an increase in that rate. So something to try and figure out maybe why that's occurring. And then finally, just the non-motorist side of things. I'm sure most of you are aware that the state vulnerable road user safety assessment was completed to supplement the SHSP this year as well. That was due back in November. Naturally, a lot of the cities in the region were identified as potential vulnerable road user communities that fell within high risk areas that fit some of their criteria on the equity and pedestrian bicycle crash side of things. And that makes sense. It's more, there's urban sections and also non-urban sections that might not be ideal for walking and biking, where we're seeing those inherent risks and seeing a need for these complete streets efforts and multimodal access. So I want to talk a lot about that. I am sure, as we have seen in many other local road safety planning efforts in the nearby regions, that bicycle and pedestrian will definitely be an emphasis area for this group. Oh, and Andrew's on the call. Andrew, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to clarify on one of the SHSP or VRU notes?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure the SHSP that we published on our webpage and everything, we did have a minor edit to be made in the list of towns and villages and stuff that were in the VRU assessment there. We're currently getting a reprinted copy and everything, and I think we have the digital one we'll republish to our webpage. But I just want to make sure we double check those villages on there before proceeding.
Yeah, and we can update that based on the new list too. That's no problem.
Okay, yeah, we'll get that to you guys as soon as we have that.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
Alrighty, next slide. Just a quick background on the safe system approach. I know it was mentioned already that one of the other SS4A efforts is really going to focus in on kind of one of the 5 elements, specifically post-crash care. The safe system approach is that idea that no one should be killed or seriously injured on our roadway network. And we're really focusing in on, how to reduce kinetic energy as part of potential collisions, reducing speed, reducing that, kind of the mass and angle of collision of our potential conflicts out there on the roadway network. And that can be done through a number of ways. Post-crash care was mentioned, but also there's a lot we can do to make our roads safer. And that's what the safe roads piece is about, how we can change the infrastructure to potentially reduce the opportunity for those fatal and serious injury collisions. Safe speeds to, again, reduce that kinetic energy component. Speed's a huge aspect of that. Safe vehicles. I think some of that also overlapped with the post-crash care ideas that were coming up in the phase 2 and even some of the phase 1 stuff. What can we do within the vehicles, or how the vehicles read our roadway infrastructure to hopefully help them better deal with impacts on the human body, both outside and inside those vehicles in collisions or conflicts. And then finally, safe road users. How can we educate folks to kind of take some of that responsibility into their own hands? And all of that builds on what NISDOT and the SHSP is trying to do as well. They're trying to get to 0 fatalities, 0 serious injuries as well, and really pushing safe system as part of their vision. It's also at the national level, huge with FHWA right now, and will definitely be something they want to see ingrained in this SS4A based Vision Zero safety plan. Each of the principles that are shown there around the border will be key aspects in how we kind of break up the strategies within the plan. We'll want to be compliant with each one of those to make sure that this plan has really covered its bases and can really, fully realize a safe system alignment. And then the next slide just kind of shows, how we used to do safety planning versus this more proactive approach we're using now. Definitely want to be addressing risks out there on the system, want to address potential conflicts that have high kinetic energy, and really, again, bring that comprehensive approach. It's kind of a shared responsibility that we want everyone to be involved in, whether it's those of us working on the post-crash care side of things, those of us working on improving our roadways, even the users themselves in terms of education and enforcement to help them better navigate the roadway safely. This is just proof that it's being used elsewhere, and it really shows some great results in some of the other countries that have implemented safe system approach sooner. These last few slides before we get into the scope are really just showing what it's going to take to be eligible for to make the plan eligible for implementation plan funding. There are some very clear guidelines and eligibility pieces to follow, including this nice worksheet that FHWA has put together. And one of those is just making sure that there's, a governing body that's going to basically sign off on this eventual goal to 0 fatalities and serious injuries, and make sure that commitment has a target date of when we want to reach 0, or 1 or more targets to achieve that significant decline heading towards 0 by a specific date. Carrie, I don't know if we want to talk any more about this one today. That is a discussion that we've been having with the other group, with the other steering committee that we kicked off with. It's just kind of an important piece that we want to put out there early and kind of get buy-in for, as it will kind of require all of the jurisdictions involved in this plan, as well as all the stakeholders involved, to believe that, or agree hopefully on a timeline for reaching that goal. And these are just some examples of other similar areas that have made use of that type of target setting. If there's no additional comments on that, I will hand it off to Alex to walk us through the scope and the engagement piece. I believe we're going to have some of our teaming partners speak to that as well.
Thanks, Corey. Before we kind of start going through tasks 1 through 11, really want to talk about kind of the superstructure, throughout the project, which is, the planning structure, working with these advisory committees, other stakeholders, and then broader community engagement, kind of seen here in this nested Venn diagram. So I'm going to bring in Liz here just to kind of walk through a little bit of some of our community engagement outline.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. So we're working with Alex and CRTC on the public engagement for this project. As Alex kind of alluded to just now, public engagement will be a really consistent element throughout all of the tasks during the length of this project. This slide just starts to break down some of those different outreach methodologies, but we will be putting together a full public participation plan for this project as one of the first tasks, and that will really guide how engagement is done over the course of the project. Some of the engagement will focus on public workshops at key milestones. The first focused on information gathering, and then review and feedback on some of the proposed recommendations. And then again, at the end, to get feedback from the community on the draft plan. We recognize that the study area is large, so we want to make sure that we're replicating meetings and making them as accessible to people as possible. So for each round of outreach, those public workshops will be held. We'll have 4 different meetings in person across the region and 1 virtual option. We are also going to assemble a community advisory committee. That committee will be a paid committee. And they will be representing some of the underserved communities that are disproportionately impacted by crashes. So again, we'll be working really closely with FHI Studio and other team members to identify those areas, and then working with you all to identify representatives to sit on that community advisory committee. That group will meet likely on a quarterly basis, again, kind of around key milestones in the project. Stakeholder meetings and focus groups will occur throughout the study. And these will likely be really flexible, virtual, some in person. Some of it will be us going to standing community meetings. And then, as Alex had shown on the other side, the CRTC Policy Board and Planning Committee, as well as you all, will be really important stakeholders throughout this whole process that we'll be meeting with. One other element that's not on this slide is we'll also be hiring 3 community liaisons. So again, looking to bring on a community liaison that will be paid, help us better connect with communities, particularly those that have been historically disinvested and underserved. And they'll be really an extension of our team throughout the planning process. And then demonstration projects, which I know Alex is going to talk about, but that'll be another huge way to gather feedback from the community. And then on the next slide, we will also have different online options for engagement too. So just providing that virtual option, and then kind of that continuous accessibility through a project website that will accept comments. We'll have interactive mapping, and then also an application called Instant Input that will help us get information out to people as there are updates to the projects, and help people visualize where some of the proposed improvements are.
Thanks, Liz. Just gonna walk through just some of the quickly some of the highlights for each of the tasks here to give just a bit of a feeling for the breadth of the project. It's going to be a quick 15 months by the time we go through all this. I mean, really, first one's project initiation. One thing that we'll be very keen to hear from are any documents and resources that folks have. Safety related, related to Complete Streets, active transportation, maybe other project recommendations, so we can build really an overall geodatabase of what's happening proposed throughout the region. So when we begin to take a look at things like network screening and looking for crashes, we have that in our foreground as well. Secondly, the next key task is really determining demographic and other factors that will go into creating equity priority areas that are really particularly related to safety. Just have a couple examples up here of the vulnerable road user risk census tracts that have been identified, and also kind of maybe some steps here too. That's what's been done by our partner FHI for the city of West Hartford in Connecticut, taking their route assess, their network screening, overlaying that with equity zones, and kind of really creating priority areas and districts for further consideration of those that are maybe potentially disparately impacted by transportation, or maybe underserved as well. Really having a holistic view that goes a bit beyond EJ and takes in other safety and access concerns. Safety analysis, this is really going to be a big chunk of the project. Really, our first step is looking at data review of not just crash and network data, but really looking at other data that's available, whether that's maybe counts, looking at other pedestrian districts from that the transportation council staff have worked on. Really trying to bring all of these other associated topics and issues into our planning process. We'll take a look at providing not just what we showed today on some 4 core performance measures, but really looking at how trends have evolved over the last 10 years and emphasis areas. We'll be using NISDOT's new clear network screening tool to do both, to identify both hotspots for locations that are overrepresented by crashes, but also doing systemic screening as well to identify potential areas with risk factors throughout the network. And we're also going to be evaluating past TIP and GTSC Highway Safety Grant funded projects to measure their post-implementation evaluation. So also, lastly, have highlighted here, so really kind of bringing some of this body of analysis, really beginning to marry that with public input at the public workshop #1. So that's kind of one of our key milestones for public engagement. Just some quick snapshots of what the data analysis will look like, kind of historical trends, looking at the emphasis areas that come out of the strategic highway safety plan. Some of these are, really across the 4 E's of, some of these are location type specific. Some of these are contributing factors like alcohol involvement. Some of these relate to different road users. The hotspot analysis, looking at segments, ramps, intersections where these crashes are. That systemic analysis is well, looking at where types of crashes are occurring, types of facilities, identifying the risk factors as well. Just some bullets here show that through some analysis that was done for FHWA a few years back, identifying particular curve radii that were overrepresented by crashes, so that particular countermeasures and treatments at those curve locations would be really the best and most efficient use of safety funding. So yeah, just a lot of crash tree diagramming. We'll do that, and this would be provided as part of the network screening as well. And then through the network screening, here's an example of what we had done as part of the vulnerable road user assessment in Alaska, is taking the network screening, aligning it with other factors, and really stitching together too, kind of through science and art, of creating a focused high injury network. That's really the basis of future investigations, planning studies, and maybe and also an area for consideration of future investments as well. Our partner Stantec on the project, they will be taking a look at identifying locations where speed limits can potentially be reduced based on new legislation in New York State. What we have here is kind of slicing it up 2 ways. One, taking a look at Group 1 roadways, local residential streets, and we'll also take a look at 5 Group 2 roadways, really identifying 5 corridors, collectors, minor arterials, where speed limits as low as 25 miles an hour can be considered as well. So following the analysis, beginning to have our discussion with ROSAC, other partners, regarding selection of programmatic strategies and capital projects as well. We'll develop a prioritization framework that's rooted in safety, brings in equity, the communities of concern, then looking at other goals that are part of the long range plan as well. So really want to make this a holistic implementation program for both capital projects and programs. Maybe it's something that'll be part of the future for implementation grant. But as Corey mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that this implementation program is really a beacon, and a resource for all partners to take a look at across all safety funding sources. We'll be doing 10 tactical sites, 10 temporary demonstrations. These could be temporary bike lanes, curb bump outs, traffic calming, other temporary measures to really test out the effectiveness and locations throughout the region. So this would be a great opportunity to reach out to the communities, get their feedback throughout the process. We'll be monitoring these sites, some before and after counts. So really see, with the hope that potentially some of these demonstration projects might be implemented in the future based on the quantitative tests that we're doing through this process. Also, Stantec will be leading 40 investigations on local facilities throughout the region. So following the network screening, we'll be looking at curating which of those 40 sites that we'd like to have go through a full investigation, including recommendations and maybe even identify if they're highway safety improvement program eligible as well. Policy and process changes. This is, identifying what are potentially some of the MPO and partner processes that could be recommended as part of the project. And also, this is where we'll take a look at further setting that goal for Vision Zero, looking at potential timelines and planning horizons for that as well. A key aspect of the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is progress and transparency. What we want to do is set up the Transportation Council, the ROSAC, and everyone in the region to be able to continually monitor safety performance throughout the region, have really this disaggregated view of trends and issues related to safety. So, part of that's creating a online dashboard. So partners and the public can continue to stay abreast of these issues. And also is, a second effort is creating the annual reporting of the implementation program as well. So identifying projects, programmatic actions that happen throughout the year as well, and really sort of tied with the annual target setting process is what we're hoping to time that for. And lastly, the last two steps are finally kind of through this cumulative process is developing the draft and final plans themselves. I see one question here. Will land use planning zoning effects be examined? One thing that we'd certainly like to know if there are any significant planning areas that we ought to be taking into consideration, developments of particular regional impact. If there will be, so we make sure that we're ahead of maybe some of those issues. Certainly. Yeah, please jump in.
I think that the land use components are really going to be relevant in maybe not so much in our high injury network where there are crashes, but when we get into the systemic safety analysis of the kinds of locations that are risk factors. So that could be like 3-lane roadways, but it could also be locations where there are grocery stores or other kinds of land use related factors.
No, I think that's very helpful. And also, looking at that in terms of setting our in terms of also equity as well, too. I mean, we're not just taking a look at where we have those existing factors, but where we want to be proactive in ensuring access to as well. So yeah, we will be looking at these opportunities to integrate land use, both existing and proposed as well, as it relates to maybe access, but also identifying if there's some other effects as well. I see another question coming through here as well. Ethan said project selection criteria will need to be based on factors like Carrie said. One thing that's project selection criteria, by really kind of looking at some of the potential projects, one thing we'd like to bring in is the safe system design criteria. So if we're looking at a potential project, we'll take that safe system approach, from conception, even before design, so that, yes, if we do see an area with demonstrated crash issues, it's important to do that. But then if we're designing future projects through this hierarchy and with the safe system approach in mind, the thought is to be able to reduce and possibly even eliminate risks in time and space for all road users in the future. Any other questions, thoughts on the scope?
I guess I had a question about the vulnerable road user assessment that the state did. I don't know if you can answer about that or not, but when they identified the areas of concern, was it based on past crash data or was it based on safe systems approach?
I'll let Robert or Andrew jump in if he wants to, but it was both. There were areas of concern brought up by different equity criteria, and then they also had a crash element for pedestrian and bicyclists as well to highlight their key locations.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm going to update you guys on is that there's going to be a webinar on February 28th, which is going to be about the vulnerable road user safety assessment methodology. It's going to be presented by our consultant, Creighton Manning.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? Thank you. These are great suggestions and notes. Just to give a short overview of the project schedule, kind of really kicking off here this month through the spring, we'll be doing a lot of our analysis, looking at factors really on the roadways ourselves with speed limits and investigations throughout the summer, beginning demonstration projects, over the warmer months as well. And then really kind of coming into the fall, really taking some of this analysis, really beginning to develop recommendations of projects, policies and processes as well. We have somewhat of a proposed ROSAC schedule here right now. We want to be able to not just send, oh, here's a draft, review and react to it. There are a number of these issues that we want to be able to discuss with folks, particularly as we get into the summer of really getting into the strategy and projects selection and the policy and process changes. So we really want to delve into really having a fuller, long conversation then, and then following up later in the fall about the drafts of those. We do have some discussion items today. Knowing that we have a number of these groups, the ROSAC, the Community Advisory Committee, community liaisons, stakeholders. We just want to make sure that we can, feel free to suggest anyone, that we should be considering reaching out to as part of the process. And if you have any existing contacts with them, please let us know. So, is there anybody that has maybe not been part of the ROSAC or not been regularly involved that our team should be aware of?
If anybody does come to mind after the meeting, please feel free to email them to me as well.
I will say for the record that, beyond the ROSAC group, we'll occasionally be briefing our other advisory committees, one of which is the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, which includes a lot of our bicycle and pedestrian advocates, and the folks that work in that realm. So just so you know that there's more than just the groups mentioned earlier that will have some degree of connection to the project as it moves along.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, we're happy to help, with slide decks, or maybe there's some of those milestones over the process that we want to keep those groups in the loop on. If there are other, standing organizations related to, education, enforcement, emergency response, public health, that's a great way for us to, kind of meet potential stakeholders where they are. Essentially, going to giving the presentation, having a conversation with them at, during their regular scheduled times if there's those meetings and groups.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, I would also like to suggest that the, local government folks, who you hear from in your community. You probably have a list of names of folks you regularly hear from complaining about traffic safety issues. Pass those names along to us, because whether they become at least groups of folks that we reach out to for public meeting events, maybe they're potential candidates for the community advisory committee, but we want to know who those folks are who obviously care about these issues in your community that you do hear from regularly.
Well, thank you. Please reach out to Carrie, Sandy, our team. Maybe we'll figure out, maybe there's some stakeholders that we'll want to have on. Maybe we'll just add some people to a mailing list. We'll kind of include some of those ideas with our public engagement plan. I see a question here. Yes, if you have names and organizations, send them to Carrie, and we'll kind of build our database that way. Thank you. Also, if there's resources for the project team, any plans and studies, corridor studies, complete streets, plans, anything else maybe potentially safety related, any investigations, please do let us know. Also, if there's any sites of concerns, particularly for going back to local government folks, if there are locations that have come up repeatedly in city council, town board meetings, be great to let us know. Keep those on our radar early and often, so we can kind of compare our network screening to that. Maybe there are potential demonstration sites. Be great to know those before we go out to the public. Then in terms of other data sets, plans and studies in any form that you have them, whether they're in a GIS format or, a PDF of the plan themselves, it'd be great to know. any projects, both kind of current and maybe, further off projects that may be in the tip, your local CIPs. We'll also be looking at the long range plan as well. Traffic counts, if any of your jurisdictions are doing counts that are not submitted to NISDOT as well. We'll maybe double check what's in traffic data viewer too and review screening if we really need to dig into an issue of concern. So yeah, please send things along to Carrie and we'll just keep on, we want to start to build our list of resources. We'll follow up with our data inventory, our resource index of plans and studies. So folks can react to that as well, but feel free just to start throwing things our way. Gary, I don't know if you want to say a few words about wanting to try to kick off the equity analysis conversation here early today before I kind of jump into some slides.
Sure, I can just explain why I wanted to, I asked Alex and Corey specifically to talk about this because it is something we should determine at the beginning of the project, along with the public involvement plan, because as we do our analysis of crashes, we should be aware of the disadvantaged areas that we want to consider for the project, and we are supposed to have some amount of public input on what you all's concerns are or factors that you think are important related to disadvantaged communities. I think Alex will talk through it, but they have an interesting way of looking at both demographics and safety specific kind of events on the roadways.
Thanks, Gary. Really in the last few years, equity analysis has really kind of had a Cambrian explosion. Title VI is, the Civil Rights Act is really based on race, nationality, and color. Environmental justice brings in low income and minority status. But really in the last few years, some other indices, New York State's disadvantaged communities and the Justice 40 from the federal government, have by magnitudes more number of factors. And they really include a lot of issues under the sun, particularly related to climate change, other historical inequities, and a range of other concerns. So we really want to kind of go underneath the hood of those to deal with what's particularly related to roadway safety, and not just kind of add everything together here. The map on the right shows that even the results of some of these are different. In the yellow, you see the Transportation Council's environmental justice areas through their calculations and formulas, while New York State disadvantaged communities kind of has a different subset, and even not everything exactly overlays either. So it's really not just an additive process, but we're going to go dig a little deeper and try to understand, communities that have burdens related to traffic safety, as well as maybe some other insecurity related to transportation. The next slide here really just, kind of goes through the 8 categories of burdens that are related to Justice 40 through the federal government. Those weren't on the map at this time, but and this one can even fit on one slide. New York State's disadvantaged communities has 140 different attributes that go into its aggregate index. So that's a whole other work product that we're working on as well. But so we really want to, seeing here that we have some issues that are related to public health, issues that are related to transportation insecurity, shown here as really as transportation barriers, as well as some other traditional factors that, more related to environmental justice. We just kind of wanted to show, provide these somewhat as an illustration and maybe a starting point for conversation as sort of a menu of options that we may want to consider to put in as priority equity areas relating to safety. And so, as we kind of see here, there are some of these factors, and we, highlighted here on the right, their particular relevance here. So, I mean, taking, that nearly 30 different factors under 8 different cost burdens, just 5 jump out at the moment. But then there are even non-justice 40 factors for consideration as well. I mean, race and ethnicity, key to Title VI and environmental justice actually aren't in Justice 40. So there's some of these are complementary, but really we want to kind of take things apart and build it back up to come up with these safety equity areas. Maybe there are some demographic factors or issues that relate to particular emphasis areas, other impacts in the transportation network. So it's a bit of a process that we're going to go through, but we want to see just to have initial conversation today. If there's anything that jumps out at folks and they'd like to see kind of included or considered, whether they're on this page or not today.
Alex?
Hey, Robert.
Hi. So yeah, one thing that I didn't see, I guess, is limited English proficiency. And I guess it's important to note that I guess the definition has been changed. It used to be the top 6 languages, vital documents translated into the top 6. Now it's the top 12. So there is that issue as well, the limited English proficiency. There's also a new Office of Language Access at Office of General Services.
Oh, cool.
Yes, they've been doing a lot of outreach themselves. Yep.
We also do have a limited English proficiency plan here based on the federal standards of the safe harbor threshold of 5% or 1,000 people, whichever is less.
There are other factors that maybe have been part of some plans that we should consider. Let us know, particularly too at the bottom here, we have needs and opportunity destinations. So, Carrie sent us along pedestrian areas that were done as part of the plan. We can look at, overlaying these areas with destinations. So kind of connecting where people are coming from to where they want to go. So not everything needs to be, demographic only data.
I guess another thing to add, Alex, this is the last thing I'll add. Refugees moving to this area oftentimes don't know about our traffic laws. And yeah, so that's going to be an issue as well. People from different countries coming here who maybe aren't as familiar with our language and our our traffic laws, that may be something that we want to address.
Thanks, Robert. I guess I'll just note if anybody does have any other thoughts on this, things that should be included or not included, you're also welcome to email them to me if they come to you after the meeting.
Are there examples of projects that you see elsewhere as well here? Everybody's doing a lot of different unique analyses right now out there.
I will just say we're interested, these are great topic areas, and I feel like for the town of Colony, it certainly complements the areas of concern. Central Avenue, Route 5 from Schenectady to Albany, we see several fatalities. We have low-income areas, temporary housing, people that are put up in different motels. And just certainly thinking about things that transcend the language barriers, so design issues of these areas where we have fast-moving traffic next to places with no mid-block crosswalks or poorly lit crosswalks. So certainly we're interested in supporting anything that's gonna make those areas safer for everyone on the road, not just folks in vehicles. And certainly the air quality component of a community that has an airport in the middle of it. There's a whole nother level of transportation, quality of living concerns.
Airports have always been tricky when you're doing even greenhouse gas emission projects. I was in London years ago and they took Heathrow Airport out of the equation because it would just skew all of their figures. So, but it is a fair point. And we have a unique entity in our midst.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, we'll have more information about this to come here. And as we get into maybe identifying our emphasis areas as well. That's the end of our presentation here today. If there's anything else anybody wants to bring up today? Well, thank you for your time here on behalf of Corey, Liz, and Laura, and the rest of our project team.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alex and Corey. I actually do want to circle back to one of the slides in the presentation. You don't have to bring it up, but was for the next 3 meetings for this group. The next meetings in 2024. We had May 16th, August 15th, and November 21st. Those are all the 3rd Thursdays of those months. Just wanted to make sure with this group that you don't foresee any common issues for people who may want to attend, like a school vacation or a transportation operations related conference that a number of people will be attending. Okay, so hearing none, we will finalize those meeting dates and send out calendar holders for us to have them on our calendar so we don't overschedule them. All right, thank you. And we just had a few more additional updates from the Transportation Council on our activities here. Andrew's gonna provide.
Yeah, Carrie and I will share some updates on some of our other activities. You can see the bullet points there on your agenda. Beginning with our work program for next year, our Unified Planning Work Program. Take a look at our website. The draft work plan was placed onto our website. And we're in a public review period now. Please take a look and let us know if you have any comments. I guess the main safety task for next year will of course be this ongoing SS4A grant. But please take a look and let us know your thoughts. There will be an open house on February 27th. If you want to stop by and ask any questions about our work program. That'll be 4 to 6 p.m. and more information about that is on our website as well. Regarding our long-range metropolitan transportation plan in motion, we have an update to share on that. I'll just read it out here. The Transportation Council has initiated an update to its metropolitan transportation plan, which will be referred to as In Motion, the plan to 2050. A regional trends story map survey and other materials are available at the new website, which is inmotionplan.org. So please take a look at that. Inmotionplan.org. Maybe Carrie will write that in chat. Public outreach is planned for all phases of the planning process with a range of ways for the public to be involved and weigh in on transportation policy and strategy. The Inform and Imagine virtual workshop is scheduled for March 21st at 6 p.m. Registration is required. More information on that is available on our website, and I suppose at inmotionplan.org as well. We have just a brief update for the upcoming Transportation Improvement Program. We are working with our Transportation Improvement Program Task Force to prepare revised application and evaluation materials. This is an ongoing process in advance of a possible fall 2024 solicitation for TIP projects. So stay tuned for more details on that. Regarding the roadway departure solicitation, we don't, Carrie and I don't have any updates to share. Robert or anyone else from DOT, is there anything you'd like to share relating to the roadway departure solicitation?
Only that we're waiting for our roadway departure safety action plan to be approved. And then when that's approved, there's going to be a local call for project. That's all that I have. I'm not sure if Andrew has anything else.
No, that's basically it. We are just waiting for the final approvals, and then we can publish the plan, and then after that, all the supporting documents would be published to our website. Contact lists and guidance and things like that. Actually, that's a good question, kind of, because it's, obviously you guys are in the middle of a lot of planning activities and all that, and so does kind of fall into that category. One of the things that we're, talking about doing is changing up that HSIP formula a little bit, and we're kind of looking at like two options right now. Basically, is we know you guys have created a lot of the MPOs have created the SS4A grants. So you've identified local priorities and emphasis areas and things like that. I don't know if you guys saw the announcement from FHWA, the notice of the proposed rulemaking. So changes coming to HSIP, and one of them is having to do with the local state split. So that's something where I know some of the MPOs have had questions about that, how you access those HSIP funds and everything. And so we're working on the guidance to that too. But back to my point, the two options is for HSIP, it's a statewide program. It's supposed to be data driven. And so the locations that identified should really be the top priorities, state or local, for the funding. And so the two ways we can do that is the main office here at DOT can run the network screening, which covers all public roads, and we can have one list of sites that you guys then would have to discuss with the regions, and kind of make the point, this project should be prioritized over this one. But you'd have all the same data, at least, coming from the same system. So you'd be comparing apples to apples. There's that method, which then we'd have a prioritized list, and whatever those locations are, those would be the priorities, local or state. The other option is to just split up the funding based on a formula of some kind, based on crashes and potential for safety improvement and population and other, things that we come up with. Divide that up by a formula, and then you guys would have a pot of money just within that region and just for local projects, and you would prioritize them based on your SS4A priorities and things like that. So I know that's probably a lot of information, and it's still just, we're trying to get all the right people to understand what that means here and how that would be accomplished. So I don't know how fast that's happening, but I think that's the way we have to go, especially with FHWA now kind of putting a focus on that and wanting to make sure that we're managing the HSIP funding correctly. But I think it also provides an opportunity to create more relationships in the region. I mean, if we got to cooperate more on safety projects, then we can attack the system more holistically, I think. And then you can also take advantage of some other relationships that we have, like you mentioned that those outreach programs and things. Department of Health, who we've given some HSIP money to, they are working on reaching out to some of the communities in their VRUSA analysis for outreach and to try and just figure out what the problems are in those communities. So we're touching equity and all that stuff. And it'd be nice to just bring all the parties in together on that piece and be able to use it, as a tool wherever you're going to do projects or go into the community. All that should be available to you guys too, and it is. So sorry for that ramble, but I just thought it kind of, was right in line with what you were talking about, the SS4A priorities and how you're going to kind of be planning this future.
I just want to say, just compliment what Andrew's describing, that the Highway Safety Improvement Program conversation is happening at a state level, in coordination soon with all 14 MPOs in New York State. So, we'll funnel information to, this group as it becomes available. But just know that the MPOs are going to be involved in kind of assisting and supporting what Andrew's talking about and which direction to go. At a statewide level.
Yeah, so I hope I didn't spill too many beans there, Sandy, or anything, but
No, it was a lot of information that may be a little into the weeds for some people, but
right, yep, yeah, but the big picture, I think it helps kind of everyone know where we're headed, kind of, and lots of good thinkers on these teams, so you never know where the next great idea is going to come from, so. So that was all I had to add there.
And just one other point on the Highway Safety Improvement Program. One of the reasons that our MPO kind of went after the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant is because the region, our region anyway, was having a hard time identifying qualifying projects for the fund source. It's a hard fund source to use in its current form. I'm glad to hear there's some conversation going on about tweaking sort of the rules of how that money gets used and what the eligible projects might be, or even how it's allocated. So all of this work that we're doing is going to greatly support identifying qualifying projects for that fund source.
Definitely. Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks,
Okay.
Andrew.
Yeah, all great information. Thank you very much, Andrew. If anything happens with the roadway departure solicitation before the next meeting, please feel free to share it with Carrie and I, and we can forward information to the ROSAC mailing list. So, last bullet point here, the regional traffic signal timing program, I'll provide a brief update. This project is nearly complete. Just a little bit of context, we hired GPI to prepare optimized traffic signal timings on several of the major roadways in the region. We have optimized timings implemented now on West Ave in Saratoga Springs. Word from our colleagues there that they're working very well. And then on State and Erie in Schenectady, those two roadways and the intersection there. The optimized timings have also been implemented there and are working well so far, but those are still in the observation period. Updated timing plans have been prepared for New Scotland Avenue in Albany, and those are under review. But we hope to have them up and running shortly as well. So that program is moving along, and I'll provide another update, I suppose, at our next ROSAC meeting. We have one final update, which Carrie will share on something that happened very recently. Go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, just following up, I think what Andrew said, the new solicitation for Safe Streets and Roads for All was released recently. In the past, there was just one deadline. This time there's, for the planning and demonstration grant applications, there's multiple deadlines. So if you missed one, I guess you could get the next one. The first one's April 4th, and then the last one's on August 29th. And I did put, I believe that is an actual link to the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program in the chat box.
Okay, that was all from us. Anyone else on the call have any closing thoughts or updates to share before we wrap up the meeting? Right.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for hanging in for an hour and a half.
Yep, thank you all very much for your time today. Keep an eye on your email. I'll send out meeting calendar holds for the remaining meetings in 2024. So thank you all very much for your time today.